In response to the comments on my previous video, a lot of people were saying that I don't deserve my subscribers. And that doesn't make much sense, because who would deserve the subscribers? Someone else? Well, I'm the one who made the videos. So, yeah, they're saying that cubing requires more hand-eye coordination than juggling, and cubing's a lot better. How does cubing honestly require more hand-eye coordination than juggling? Juggling, it's fast-paced. Sure, cubing's fast-paced too, but you can stop if you want to. Juggling, you can't. You'll drop the balls on the floor. You have to keep moving. Requires far more hand-eye coordination. That just didn't make any sense. And cubing, yeah, I think you have to be smarter to do cubing than juggling. Juggling, well, there's some intelligence involved, but for the most part, it's mostly hand-eye coordination. But I will make some more cubing videos just to please you guys. Maybe some more extreme cubing, and maybe someday a 5x5 tutorial, but don't expect that anytime soon. So I'm going to go through with my book review video I said I was going to do. And I've got like 7 books here. First one, Foundling by D.M. Cornish. This book looked really cool. It's got neat characters on the front, really cool illustrations, and there's little pictures throughout the whole book. And I thought maybe it looked a bit young for me, about monsters and fairies and stuff and magic. And I was right. This book is extremely boring. There was like no action throughout the whole thing. A very slow storyline, unlikable main character. In fact, there weren't any characters I really liked in this book. It was just bad. So, don't exactly recommend that one. The Golden Compass. I'm sure you guys have heard of this one. This book was okay. It was like an average young adult adventure story. But for the most part, it wasn't everything everyone made it out to be. I haven't seen the movie, so I didn't really know what it was about when I started reading it. And it's sort of about alternate realms toward the end, and everyone has these things called demons, and it's like a little pet that follows them around. They can talk to it, and it's sort of part of them. And there's a secret organization that has to do something with the demons, and they think they might be taking them away from kids, which is horrible. And then seeing someone without a demon is like seeing someone without a head. But in that sense, it's sort of hard to relate to the characters in the story, because you can't exactly understand what they're going through if they lose their demon. It was okay. I'd say like 6 stars, 7 stars out of 10. Ender's Game. This is a pretty popular sci-fi novel. It's from like the 70s. This was a pretty good book. The main character, who is basically a military genius, he starts out at like age 6 or 7. And by the end of the book, he's like 12. And the book moved a bit fast. At the end of the chapter, it would say 6 months passed or a year passed, and that just doesn't make sense pacing-wise, because you want to know what's happened during that time. It doesn't exactly tell you. It doesn't fill you in on everything. But basically, this one genius kid, it's up to him to save the world against this alien race, and it was a lot like War Games, if you've seen that movie. But it's a pretty good book. Not my favorite, but it was neat. Then A Crack in the Line by Michal Lawrence. This was about different dimensions, sort of, and people have found out how to cross in between them. And sometimes you can see into another dimension. When you think you're seeing a ghost, you're actually seeing someone else in another dimension in a thin spot in the wall between them. And so there's 2 people living the same life in alternate dimensions, and every time there's 50-50 chance of something happening, another realm is formed, and things occur differently there. Sort of hard to explain. You'd have to read it. This is a pretty cool book. Airborn by Kenneth Oppel. This book, it was really cool. Sort of a steampunk novel, if you know what that means. It's like sort of futuristic, but sounds like it's the 1920s or so, early 1900s. Basically, it's about a lot of airships and people's adventures on them. And the main character, Matt, he and his friend Kate go to this mysterious island because their ship crash lands there, and there's air pirates and different creatures and treasures and stuff. And it sounds like a sort of generic adventure, and it sort of is, but it's like it was written to be classic. And this is a really cool book, one of my favorites of all time. The sequel is even better, Skybreaker. So definitely worth reading. Anyone will enjoy this book. It's not like non-stop action, but it is really fascinating. This book, Feed by M.T. Anderson, was by far the most depressing book I have ever read. I didn't know a book could possibly be so dismal, but at the same time, it was amazing. This book takes place in the future, and people have become so attached to the media and computers that they get computers actually implanted in their brains when they're like 2 or 3. and they become sort of part of the computer thinks for them. And so someone asks them, oh, what day did George Washington die? And they can look that up and know it instantly. But because of that, the people aren't smart. They know everything because of their feeds, that's what the computer's called, but they're really stupid. And basically the author was like, hey, what if everyone was a moron? I'm going to make that into a book. And he did. It was really cool, but it was sort of frustrating because the main character is likable, but he's a moron. And then there's like one other character who's actually smart, but the end of the book, I'm not going to ruin it if you've read it, but it's just the weirdest and most depressing ending possible. You're flipping through the last pages and you keep expecting something good to happen, and nothing ever comes of it. And it was just really depressing. So, yeah, still a very good book. One of my all-time favorites. And this book is my favorite book of all time, A Darkling Plain by Philip Reeve. And it's the 4th book in the Hungry City Chronicles. I doubt you've heard of it. In fact, I bet you probably haven't heard of any of these books except for a couple. But it's also a steampunk novel. That's one of my favorite genres. And it's sort of sci-fi, sort of fantasy. But it takes place in a world where cities have become mobile due to natural disasters. There are volcanoes everywhere and the climate's falling apart. So cities were forced to become mobile. And they started moving around. The first traction city, that's what they're called, was London. And it started moving around, and people quickly realized that these cities need a ton of resources, a ton of coal. I think they're steam powered. It's sort of vague, but and there's also airships, just like in Airborn. It's very similar to that, but this book came out first. So the cities actually eat each other, hence the name Hungry City Chronicles. That sounds a bit weird, but I think that's more of a cargo bay. So that's how they get their fuel. They just eat up other cities and grow bigger and bigger and stronger. And it's really fascinating. So basically it's a war between the Tractionists, the city people, and the anti-Tractionists, or the Green Storm, the army that's trying to stop them. And there are a ton of characters, but the two main characters don't really take sides in this book. They just sort of go back and forth, never siding with anyone, but sort of caught in the crossfire. And the main character, Tom, he's really generic. Your generic adventure guy. He's just, I don't know, he's not too exciting. He's shy. But the other character, Hester, is really cool, and she's been scarred on her face, so she's always hated everyone basically, and she just goes around killing stuff, but she's pretty good at it. She's just a really interesting character, and her role really develops throughout the series. So like I said, this is the 4th book. The first book is Mortal Engines, and that's my second favorite book. But this book was just such a perfect conclusion to the series. It was unbelievable how well he wrapped it together. Ending was sort of sad, but other than that, it's just the most unbelievably action-packed book. It's like he almost took the whole series, made it into one book, and made this one the finale, because it was non-stop action through the whole thing, but it sort of made sense, and he really pulled everything together in the series. So, I think just about anyone would like this book, but read the first one before you read this one, because otherwise it'll make no sense. So, that's about it. I went a bit quickly with those reviews, 30 seconds apiece, but, so give me your thoughts. If you want me to do more book reviews, I will. I read 2 books a week, so that shouldn't be a problem. So, thanks for watching.